Okay. Uh, I'm live. 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 Okay. So we are here yet again on a Wednesday, the day after I did a really cool webinar yesterday. Um, and I am going to share this with the Facebook group very quickly. So let me do that. But first, let me find the Facebook page that's actually already logged in. One thing about having a new computer that's faster is that haven't been managing my tab very well because the computer doesn't slow down. So, all right, so I finally found a group. Q and A is on now. Okay, post that. And just on time, I'm going to write in the questions that I'll be covering. Let me find this YouTube channel again. Where are we? YouTube. Oh, there we are. Okay. Um, okay, so let's talk about the questions I'm going to be covering this week. Oh, okay. Cool. Okay, so let's see here. So the first question I'll be answering is, what's your training process like for your receptionist? Second question I'll be answering is, how do you come back after a few bad reviews? Okay. Third question is, how do you pick a good company name or logo? Those are three good questions. So there's no one on yet. We're about 2 minutes and 30 seconds in. I'm going to wait about 2 or 3 more minutes. Then I'll get popping with answering these questions. And even if nobody hopped in, these are recorded, so at some point somebody will be watching this. So I appreciate it either way. Okay, so I've turned the heat up, and I need to turn it back down. All right, all right, all right, all right, all right. Okay, we got the first person showing up. Yeah, so I'm gonna wait a few minutes here. About 3 minutes and 20 seconds in on my end. At the 5 minute mark, start answering the questions. Whoever you are, feel free to say hi and where you're from. I was starting to get some. Hey, Darren, good to see you, man. I was starting to get some spammers, as you know, so I made the commenting for subscribers only, which not like you're paying anything to subscribe here. So figured that would help. Figured that would help a little bit. Um, Yeah, so again, we'll be answering what's your training like? How do you come back after a few bad reviews? And how do you pick a good company name or logo? So, should be helpful. Whoever just hopped in, say hello. Glad you're here. This, I have to do a disclaimer every time. This is still water, natural spring water. So, to your health, H2O. H2O, the best thing for you. Imagine someone being allergic to water. I wouldn't imagine that they would live long enough to determine that they're allergic to water. Hey, B, good to see you. Good to see you. All right. Good to see you. Yeah, so we're almost 5 minutes in, so about 30 seconds or so, I'll start answering some questions. Again, I'll be answering what's your training like for your receptionist? How do you come back from a few bad reviews? And how do you pick a good company name? Now, the cool thing about, I lost my train of thought that fast. Long day today. Let's see. No, before I answer the question, um, let me back up. So for those of you that are hopping on and that are watching this, uh, whenever I do these live Q&A calls, I usually come in with 3 questions that I'm prepared to answer that are sort of pre-written, uh, so that I'm answering something regardless. But for those of you that are here when I'm live, I always prioritize answering the live questions over the ones that I have, written down, over the ones that I have written down to answer. My wife would tell me that I need to stop talking through the yawning. So I just remembered that, and I'm going to try to continue to do that going forward. I'm just going to yawn, pause, and then talk. But yeah, so there's a few announcements I wanted to make, though. The first is that if I actually did a webinar yesterday, not a question and answer, but a webinar, and that webinar was on 4 steps to create your own call center company. And for this week, if you get involved in the course, if you're not already involved in the program, the course to try, if you get involved by Friday at midnight Eastern, then you get 20% off. So the course is normally a certain amount, and you get 20% off that amount. Okay. And so I'm turning that card off as soon as midnight hits. Okay. That's one. Second announcement is that my website is down. I'm going to write probably a post about this in the Facebook group. I don't think I'll send an email about it, but certainly in the Facebook group, I'll write a post. But essentially, I've been using the same hosting provider for about 7 years. VickyVirtual.com actually uses it. And you know what? Let me check right now. It'd be funny if I talked about this and all of a sudden there's no issue. Hold on. Yeah, it appears it's not fixed, and I don't know when it's going to be fixed. So, long story short, been using the same hosting provider for 7 years, really without much issue. There was like one little tiny snafu that was solved within an hour or two. But unfortunately, this time around, and I found out about a half hour before the webinar, the hosting account, like as a service, seemed to have gone down completely. The entire hosting service. So that means not just me, John, then talk. That means not just me, but everyone knows a client of this particular hosting provider, all of their sites are down right now, every single one of them. And so it's a big deal. In my case, it's not a huge deal, but I didn't have copies of my site, so I'm having to redo the website from scratch, basically. Thankfully, I had the copy of the words, the web copy, and I found that on the Wayback Machine, which if you haven't heard of the Wayback Machine, look that up. It's a really cool resource. So over the next few days, for those of you that are wondering why certain parts of the site aren't working, that's why. But by the end of this week, it will be like nothing ever happened, and everything will be back to normal. However, this did not impact people's ability to invest in the program and be able to access the program immediately, as well as retain assets, because it's on a completely different system that's completely solid and legit with 200,000 users, I believe. So that's an announcement that I wanted to make. I thought that was really important. Okay, so so Be Well has a great question. I'm wondering about pre-launch advertising. Do you use lead magnets? And if so, what kind of offering did you use to capture emails? My answer to that would be yes, we did use lead magnet. Um, I give a couple suggestions in the course itself as to what lead magnets you could use. Um, I'll give one right now. So one real simple suggestion is basically centering your thing around things that help companies streamline their business. So, maybe like some type of article or something, 5 tips to streamline your industry company, your law firm, your accounting firm, whatever, right? And then let's say number 4 or tip number 5 in that 5 tip article is, using a virtual receptionist company. And so obviously that's a pretty clear plug for your type of service in that regard. It's unintrusive. Excuse me. It's unintrusive. It's something which it's completely relevant. And if someone is interested in that type of info, streamlining their company, that's what virtual receptionist companies do. They really do help streamline. So yeah, that's the answer. We certainly do use it, and not all of the students do that, but the ones that are doing it, I would think it's a smarter thing. What some people are doing instead, though, instead of lead magnets, it and I guess lead magnets could factor into that, but they're basically setting up discovery calls and trying to sell them, like pre-sell them. So instead of having people on an email list, they're trying to sell them. So I honestly don't remember. um it would be module 4. So module 4. um Oh, hey, Nyla. I didn't realize that B well was Nyla. So that's good. I'll answer. I'm gonna answer in general. Obviously, in the tribe calls, I answer a bit more in depth, and so we can talk about lead magnets in the tribe call after this call. So yeah, but fantastic question. I gotta try to remember. B well is Nyla. There's one other person that is sort of I put her in my brain as similar to you, and her name is Zakaya. Zai- Zakara. Zakara. She has a very complicated name, um, and her YouTube is sort of like peace and blessings or something like that, and her vibes are very similar. But she's also in the tribe, and she's doing her thing. Um, so anyway, I hope that answers your question at least to an extent. Um, so let me know if it did. Okay, so really quickly, I'm going to answer what training like for your receptionist. So I'll give a high level overview of that. Um, so training essentially is pretty simple in this business. Essentially, what's happening is, the agent needs to understand, common call center agent etiquette, knowing how to handle calls in a certain way. And there is an overall etiquette that is universal for those that are working in the call center industry. Now, outside of that, you can get pretty specific based off of the specific client that you are serving. And so what we typically find is that there are, clients that you're serving, say you got like, I don't know, 10, 15 of them, or even like 70, 80. The training will consist of getting familiar with each one of the clients and what their instructions are on the scripts, and getting to understand the different nuances and quirks and small little differences that exist between these individual clients and everyone else. You'll find that, as an agent over time, you learn that different industries have similarities that sort of cross over into pretty much any company within a given industry. But also, again, individual companies have different processes and protocols. And so understanding those nuances stops us from being an agent that, picks up the phone call and, just reads the instruction and doesn't have any familiarity outside of that with the company. You sort of start to bridge the gap between, random call center person to someone that is a dedicated agent or feels like a dedicated agent or maybe even feels like an in-house receptionist for a given company. When you understand those quotes, you understand those nuances. So those are the two pieces of training. Understand the nuances of each client by going through the scripts of all of them and really learning them, which is a lot less complicated than it sounds. And then two, understand in general, etiquette. And then I got the third thing is understanding the policies of the company that you're running, like the call center itself, right? And that's it. So that's what it is. Any other questions from anyone? Now, again, another question that was pre-written was how do you come back after a few bad reviews? Now, you know, it always sucked to get bad reviews. Um, we didn't get any bad reviews. The only bad reviews that I can remember, excuse me, I decided not to talk through that one. The only bad reviews that I can remember that we got was during the time that we had our phone system go bad, like a completely, we made a switch to a different phone system vendor, and after we switched, it ended up being a disaster. The new phone system vendor was not good at all, and so it was disastrous. And we were lucky that we got as few bad reviews as we did. We were missing, more than 50% of all calls, even though we had the bandwidth to answer them. It was bad. So in terms of bouncing back, I mean, we just fought those negative with positive, right? We already had a bunch of positive because there was zero negatives, and then we got like 3 or 4 negative reviews. So we like basically got like 4 positive reviews to get things back. It wasn't a huge deal. There's some people that absolutely try to drown out the bad reviews, and technically we could have done that, but we got the client, but no one had really taken ownership of doing that, at least not when I was there, so we just didn't do it. Okay. Darren asked, do you have any approximate pricing you would use for outbound appointment setting per lead? For example, if a client has 1,000 leads to be called and we will try to reach them 5 times, how much would it be per lead? How much would you charge per lead? If you're attempting, we didn't do outbound campaigns like that, and I'm not a big fan of them. But if I were to price it out, I would basically try to break it down to what I believe would be the amount of call time, that's utilized in making those 5 attempts. Now, the one good thing about outbound is that if you're just outbound, your bandwidth is technically a lot higher per agent, right? Um, with inbound, calls tend to come in waves, and you have to be ready to take those calls at any given time. And so availability is key, right? And so, the bandwidth limitation that you're going to have while still being able to always be available, have an agent available to answer the next call, that threshold's a lot lower than, oh, I just need to, get through calling these leads on a given list at any given time. You can have a consistent calling activity throughout the day when it's outbound. And so, therefore, your bandwidth gets a lot higher. It can go from about um, uh, I'm trying to do the math here, about 37.5% of the time to roughly double that. So about 75% of the time. So basically, every agent essentially had double the bandwidth. And because you have double the bandwidth now, theoretically, you could charge a little bit less. But there's another aspect when it comes to outbound stuff, and that is that you need to seriously consider value based pricing, or else you're selling yourself short. With value based pricing, you're not just selling your cost, right? And then a certain margin on top of that. You're selling, at least to a certain extent, on the value that you bring in terms of having a certain level of quality in terms of your agents that are reaching out to these leads and potentially closing deals, right? If you close deals, that's worth a certain amount of money. And so uh, if I'm doing sort of a discovery call or interview situation with a prospect like that, I'm not only asking the question of, hey, how many leads need to be called and how many times would you like us to attempt to reach them, and also what's the timeline for that. I would also ask, do you have any metrics in terms of how many of these leads you anticipate or expect us to close? What the minimum, what expected, and what is considered an awesome, like blockbuster effort. So get like a low, medium, high in that regard, but also try to get, and most times they're willing to say it because they like breaking down these things. Um, a sense of how much each sale is worth, like truly worth, maybe in terms of revenue, maybe in terms of actual profit. And I tend to ask questions like that, like, well, profit, how much profit do you make on a given sale? And so if somebody says, well, you close a lead and, we get $100 in profit. Okay. Then, and it better be higher than that in this scenario, because it might not make sense if you don't do it that way. So let's say it's $1,000 profit for them. In that scenario, I am probably going to do something like, I break it down like an agent in a day can legitimately reach out to about 150 people without being stressed out. If it's all outbound, and especially if it's on an auto dialer, because you're not going to be doing manually dialing, that would be ridiculous, and much more slow. So when you're doing auto dialing, you can get through a list of 1,000 leads in a few days. If it's just one agent, though, you can theoretically have 150 conversations in a day, right? So you got to figure out how many people are going to be picking up. So if after 5 attempts you get, say, 60% to pick up the phone, then you're going to have 600 conversations, and one agent by themselves could get through that list in 4 days. So if one agent can get through that list in 4 days, and you're paying the agent, say, $15 an hour, $15 an hour at 8 hours is 120 times 4, $480. So basically $500 in payroll costs to handle 5,000 calls, which is actually pretty low. And so what I would theoretically do is do a breakdown of, okay, well, we'll charge like $2 a lead and it'll be $2,000. Or if they think that, well, it's worth 1,000 to us, we expect you to close like maybe 30 deals, then you can do something like, well, what if you pay us $100 per sale? And they can say yes or no. Some people are happy to give you $100 for closing a deal that nets them $1,000. And in that scenario, if you close, 2/3 of that expectation, then you still get your $2,000. But if you close what they anticipate, then you get $3,000 instead of $2,000. Either way, you only need to close 5 in order to make your payroll cost back of 480, basically $500. So that's the breakdown. That's how I think about it. You know, I literally, I'll be completely honest with you. I haven't thought about it that way ever before, ever. But I have thought about things in terms of like how much will it cost me in terms of actual time spent on the phone via an agent? How much is that going to cost me? And how can I make a decent margin on it while also allowing my client to make a decent margin, if we perform in a way that we need to. So, if your business model, Darren, there's a follow up. He said, my business model is more appointment setting as opposed to actual sales. So, if it's, thank you, Nyla. Um, if the business model is more focused on appointment setting, then you still want to ask the question that determines, hey, okay, if we're just appointment setters and you got closers on your end, how many appointments, how much is an appointment worth? And then they'll start to give you the breakdown. So, my closers, they tend to close 25%. We make $1,000 on the sale. So, I would say an appointment is worth $250, right? So if an appointment is worth $250, then maybe setting an appointment is a smaller task, right? So you're not going to ask for $100. So maybe you ask for $20, right? And $20, and you're able to book an appointment instead of the 30 sales on 1,000 lead. Maybe you can book 100 appointments. Well, then you make your $2,000 and you're making 4x on the payroll cost. Either way, it's a good scenario, and I would take 100 of those clients, as long as it seems like you also want to get a sense of what it is you're trying to sell. If you can wrap your personal head around what they're saying to you and whether it seems like it's something that's feasible to sell to people. If it seems feasible to you, and maybe you do your due diligence on them, check out their website at least, or if they have anything. If they seem like a company that looks like they've got their crap together, so it seems like other people are gonna feel like they would trust this company and give their business to them, then you'll be in a situation where you theoretically could do sort of like an expected commission thing. But if you do not necessarily feel a certain way, then you want to just charge per lead. Again, I would probably charge about $2 per lead. If you charge $1 per lead, that's fine. You're still going to profit on it. I think in any scenario, you're going to straight up profit on it. But, it might be selling yourself a little short. I think there's a lot of situations where, like Receptionist, and I think I typed that on a different couple weeks back, but Receptionist, they are a company that charges based off of the appointment that they book. So, okay, I hope that helps. Oh, you said got it, makes sense. All right, fantastic. Okay, so another question that, and whatever questions you guys have, continue to ask. But another question that, and the third question that was pre-written here is, how do you pick a good company name / logo? So I didn't realize that this was my method for this until I created the course. And what I've realized is that I've done a lot of this because I've straight up legitimately started 25 different companies. Now 13 of them now have been actually incorporated. So I took it that far. But in terms of at least getting a sale because of a project, there's been 25 companies in the last, since 2012. So I got 10 years now. And so obviously when you start that many projects and, probably even had a lot more ideas than that, There's a lot of naming going on. And at a certain point, you got to get to the point where it's like, listen, I don't want to spend all kinds of time coming up with a name. One of the things I've learned is that where the name matters is not to make or break ever, right? How stupid of a name is Google? Google is a stupid name, and so is Yahoo. Yahoo! Now you can market it and brand it in a certain way that makes it seem normal. But I remember the very first time I heard of Google, I was a third grader. I was 9 years old, which means it was 1993. So this might be wrong. Maybe it was Yahoo I'm talking about. But I remember thinking Google the first time I heard about it was stupid. Like it sounds like Google Gaga. Who would, take that seriously? Uh, I'm gonna have to ignore that call. You know what? Nope, I'm taking this call. Sorry. Hello? No. Thank you. Okay. So, so sorry about that, but I had to take that call. Um, so how do I pick a good company name? So I have a system for this. Essentially, I try to usually call center cast did not follow it, but I try to create something that I can sort of have sort of a mascot around. And that could mean something as simple as, um, with Vicky Virtual, it was essentially like a receptionist. It was very easy to create a mascot around that type of thing. I was able to have like sort of a cartoon character situation of this, person that's just very helpful virtual receptionist that is willing to help out the different companies, right? The different clients. And so people can attach themselves to a name very easily. And the entire premise is them being able to connect with the brand in a way that they feel a connection. And so if you make your brand human, then it's easier for a human to form a connection with your brand, right? So that's what we did, Vicky Virtual. It also rolls off the tongue very easily, right? It's two V's. It makes it easier to remember. Um, Even though literally everyone said virtual Vicky, um, at least they got the words right. They never forgot that. And it's funny, I don't think I even owned the or I ever owned the domain name virtualvicky.com. I think someone else had it. Oh, it's for sale for $2,300. I would never buy that. But so Vicky Virtual is our company. It was very easy to brand that. It was very easy to create a cohesive branding strategy around that. Um, I try not to do things that are too startupy, like Shopify or something. I think that unless you create a large company, it can be um, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. Like startup name can be cool. There's a lot of people that are very attached to startup name. Pretty much any millennial probably. Um, but if you're startup then you need to straight up be a 21st century situation. So if you have like a startup name and then like your features aren't like the most cutting edge, then that might be a little difficult. Um, but that's the main thing. I try to create something that can be humanized. Now, call center cast. I'll be honest with you. I don't like the name at all. Um, and I didn't come up with one of the few things I ever did that I didn't actually come up with the name. I had something else, and I was really blanking on it. And then I put out some type of poll, and there was someone that suggested in one of my mastermind groups, I think, and there was someone that suggested call center cast, and I hated it. But she was like, you know what? You should do a poll. Does a poll. I put a poll out there, and there was like, about 50 people that voted on this poll. And call center cast won by a landslide. So I didn't want to argue with that. And that's why call center cast is called call center cast. I think it's gimmicky, but it is what it is. Um, so that's another technique. You can either do the humanizing thing that I like, or you can come up with some different names that you may or may not like, but at least have the alliteration thing going on. Call center cast, Vicky virtual, and then just put it to a vote. And whatever the public decides, try to find a scenario where you're getting at least 50 votes or more. That's a sort of decent sample size, and then whatever they pick, go with it. Um, and that's that. Now, first the logo, people hate me for this, but I just go to Fiverr. I think there's a lot of people that are a lot more serious about the logo, and I think when it comes to certain industries, it is a lot more important. Such as fashion brands, I think you have to have your logos on point. E-commerce brands in general, I think you have to have a really good logo. But when it comes to service companies, I don't think the logo is all that important. Um, People put a lot of stock in that. And when you look at the most intense, like largest market share companies out there, they pretty much all have very simple logos. If you look at the Google logo, Nike, perfect example, um, Mercedes, Audi, BMW. Porsche is not that simple, but it at least has a lot of meaning to it. It was very intentional, which is fine. Um, but yeah, I mean, the majority of those large companies out there, they have extremely simple logos. Um, because when you try to do too much, it just, people get confused. So, I like things that people can attach themselves to and humanize and that they can remember easily. Uh, and then also the final thing is, whatever the name is, I want to be able to buy that domain name. So if it's Vicky Virtual, I needed to be able to buy vickyvirtual.com. The only scenario in which I'm okay with that not being the case is something like, let's say I named the company Donald. Well, I'm not going to get Donald.com. There's a lot of Donalds, one in particular that definitely never going to let me have that name. Um, so, maybe it'll be something like, get Donald, I don't know, Donald Factory. I don't know. It depends on what the business is. So I'm okay with a domain name with Donald in it in that scenario. Uh, but if it's not something as simple as like, Donald or whatever, like let's say I named the company call center, if it's not as common of a phrasing or name as that, then I get an exact match for the domain name. Because if you don't, what's going to happen the majority of the time, if you have a simple name, Vicky Virtual, and then you say, oh, yeah, Vicky Virtual, and it's callvicky.com or callvickyvirtual.com, people are going to go home and the first thing they're going to type in is vickyvirtual.com. And if someone else owns vickyvirtual.com, especially if it's something in the same industry, they're going to be like, hmm, yeah, this is probably it. This is probably it. And you might lose that business, right? So yeah, I just don't want to have any gray area there. I don't want to put myself in a situation where I shoot myself in the foot for any reason. So that's all I've got. And yeah, so if any of you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask. I just have a few minutes here before I'm gonna hop on to the tribe call. So make sure if you got any questions, you ask them now. Final announcement. Um, um, there is a discount on the course right now. I said this earlier. There's a discount on the course right now, 20% off until Friday at midnight. In order to take advantage of that, make sure you either message me directly or you figure out a way to watch the webinar replay. I did a webinar last night on the 4 steps on how to start a call center. So, other than that, I appreciate you guys. I'm going to wait about 90 seconds or so just to see if any additional questions come in. So, yep. Uh, it's almost 40 minutes in, about 52 seconds, 39:52. At 41 minutes in, if there aren't any new questions, then I will end this. And, I certainly appreciate you guys being on here. And we're going to keep it going every week. And for those of you that are that either came in late or that are watching the replays of this or recording of this, thank you for being here. So yeah, I try to do these every single week. Just make sure you're subscribed, and that way you'll be able to just get notified whenever I do them. There was a few people that were like, "I never have the chance to come in." Well, just make sure you're subscribed, but also hitting the bell. There's like a bell where you get alerted whenever I go live. I go live pretty much at the same time every week, Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Central. But either way. You know. So for those of you, especially those of you watching the recording, make sure you click that bell, or else you're gonna miss it. All right, so we're 41 minutes after, 41 minutes in, and we've got the tribe call. So Nyla, I'll see you there. Darren, hope you come over to the other side soon enough. But either way, I appreciate you guys. 20% off until Friday at midnight Eastern time. And that's all I've got. And I'll see you guys next week.